The evil spirit Lamia is claiming the soul of a boy. The boy fell from a great height. The floor crashed, pulled into hell. An old lady, Susan, applied for a deferment, but she was denied. Then she got down on her knees to Chris. The bank clerk kissed Chris's skirt. Chris ducked back, rushed over and tried to choke Chris. Security guards took her away. Susan appeared in the back seat of Chris' car, pulls Chris by the hair from behind and puts her arms around Chris' neck. Chris puts her foot on the gas, puts on her seatbelt. She crashed into the car. Susan bites Chris on the jaw. Chris took a stick and stuck it in Susan's mouth, kicked Susan out of the car. Susan took a rock and smashed the window, dragged Chris out of the car, pulled a button off Chris' sleeve. Susan recited a spell. Chris went to sleep. Susan puts the cursed button in Chris' hand. Chris woke up. Susan was gone. After that, Chris saw an evil spirit with horns on its head. Lamia. She was knocked to the ground. A fly got in her mouth. She woke up choking. As she lay down, suddenly became Susan. Susan growled at her, tried to chew on her, sprayed her face with bugs. Chris woke up. It was a dream. Chris had a nosebleed and a lot of blood came out of her mouth. She covered her mouth and blood was coming out of her nose. Chris touches Susan's body. Susan falls down and chews on Chris's chin. A lot of liquid poured into Chris's mouth. Susan ripped out a strand of Chris' hair. Susan appeared. Lamia, the evil spirit, appeared. Chris was thrown around in the air. She fell to the ground. Chris killed his cat and sacrificed it to Lamia. Bury the cat. And I appeared in the cake. Chris stabs the eye with a fork. Chris coughs up a fly. Susan appeared out of nowhere. She grabbed Chris by the neck, rushes her fist and arm into Chris's mouth. Chris pulls a nearby iron and hits Susan. Susan's eyeballs shoot into Chris's face. Gone. Several people helped Chris with his exorcism, but the exorcism failed. Susan's handkerchief blew into Chris's mouth. Chris ripped the handkerchief out. Chris dug up Susan's grave and covered Susan's coffin. Susan's face was covered in maggots. Ripped out a strand of Chris's hair. Chris used a shovel to open Susan's mouth. Gave the button with the envelope to Susan in a ritual of sacrifice. Chris was getting ready to go on a trip with Clay. Clay pulls the button out of his pocket. Chris mistook a coin for a button. She fell onto the train tracks. The tracks burst into flames. Hands reached out from the flames. Chris was pulled into the inferno. Afterwards, the tracks returned to normal.